And we're live. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Time and Place, the gospel conversation show where we talk about faith on the fringes and do our best to bring God's word to God's world. My name is Solomon. This is Julian.
Yep.
And today we're going to talk about banned books. But first, Julian, what the heck is going on in the world today?
Well, a couple of things, and it's like they won't stop happening. So it's in rapid succession. First, our boy Rogan got canceled this week. So that was cool.
This is like his fifth or sixth cancel.
Yeah, but this one stuck, I think.
No, well, it'll stick when he loses his job, but he's not.
Well, I mean, how do you lose your job when it's your you can't? Oh, I mean, I guess you can.
How's it stick if nothing happens?
Because I feel like going forward, and maybe I'm wrong, I feel like going forward, he's going to be a little more neutered.
I don't.
You don't think so?
No, because I listened to the episode right after all the cancellation, and he's talking about everything. I mean, it's like nothing. It's like because one of the things they talk about is call him out for is like misogyny and stuff. And he's talking about wild women and they can be whores and like all this stuff. I'm like, what are you saying? Like, are you not watching? He's like not watching what he says.
Well,
which is kind of okay. It's like okay, good. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
I don't see a neutered.
I don't know. We don't have a supercut of him saying bad things about women yet. When they put that out,
yeah, that's part two.
That's how they get you the supercut. Well, Schultz laid it out that way. He said it was misinformation, then it was going to be the racism, then it's going to be misogyny and transphobia, and they're going to hit him with all of it.
Yeah, in waves.
Yeah.
Well, that's how you know it's a hit job,
right?
Because they did the whole Neil Young thing, and Spotify's like, okay, bye.
Yeah, later Neil Young,
and then they're like, okay, that didn't work. Okay, now what? Now this. So you know what I mean? So it's like if it was just randomly like, oh, there's this video, we had no idea that Joe Rogan has said the N-word 1,000,000 times over 30 years of entertainment, whatever, and you know, and so. But that supercut's been out for years.
Yeah,
that smash like that compilation video has been out for a long time. So just now it's just resurfacing when the Neil Young hit.
Well, it's February. That was the mistake. Hit him with it in Black History Month.
February for years.
yeah, but he wasn't on
the of February.
You know what the problem was? He wasn't.
It was huge last year.
He was yes, but he wasn't as mainstream.
Yes, he was
not as because the Spotify thing is what made him mainstream.
He was in the news for moving Austin. I mean, there's plenty of times where he's popped up in the mainstream that they could have like shot at him, and they haven't. It's just the Spotify thing. It's just it was the Robert Malone.
Yes, well, because the narrative,
it's the vaccine, but he's been doing that for years too. He's been doing that from the beginning,
right? But he didn't matter before. It just didn't matter. I think one, they needed a boogeyman because Trump's gone,
right? And
he's not going to win again. I know he's going to run again, but he's not going to win again. It's just not going to happen.
You think Trump's going to run again?
He's for sure going to run again.
I don't know. I don't think he will.
All the people close to him have been saying he's going to run again. I think he's going to run again. I don't think he cannot. He needs it.
I don't think he expected to win the first time.
No, for sure he didn't.
So why would he run again? Like, crap, I can actually win.
Because
I don't want that job.
Now he knows he can win.
Yeah, but he doesn't want the job.
No, he doesn't want the job. He wants the accolades and then stick it in your face.
Comes with the job.
Yeah,
he's got to get the job, which I don't think he wants.
I think
he wants publicity. He wants the attention.
Yes,
but he doesn't want the job.
Right, because nobody sane wants the job.
You can't apply for the job if you don't want it.
But you know he did it the first time.
But I think what he's going to try, he's going to go even harder this time because he doesn't want the job. Because I think the first time he ran, he didn't want the job, and so he's like, I'm just going to say whatever I want and just be insane. South Park did a whole episode. Like, that was the whole thing of South Park, where it was like he didn't actually want the job or whatever. And so he's just saying the wildest crap. And then he's like, oh, crap. Now, I actually have a job now.
South Park, too. They didn't think he was going to win.
Yeah.
So they had to, change the whole next season because they were planning on him losing. And then he won. So they were like, rewrite it. The story doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I just kept up with. I don't watch South Park people. I'm not a bad person. So, but I was informed and kind of caught up on that whole storyline or whatever, where he was running, but then he actually won. Didn't mean to. I think that's actually true though. I think he didn't actually mean to win. I think he wanted the publicity, and then he accidentally won, and he's like, "Oh crap! Now I gotta
Well, he did it out of spite.
Yeah.
When Obama made the joke about him never being president, that was the moment where he's like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm rich. I can do this.
Yeah, and I don't think he actually wants the job. So that's why I don't know if he'll run. I think he'll just talk a lot about running.
Oh
and
man,
then
I don't
not
know.
actually.
I don't
do
think
it
his
because he
ego
doesn't
can
want the job, and I think now he knows it.
Yeah, but if he doesn't run, then everybody can talk. That's another thing for everybody to throw in his face. Like, you were full of it.
You don't care about that. They already say that.
He does.
What?
You know why he does? Because he still is trying to get credit. The Trump base is largely anti-vaccine. Whatever you want to take that for, that's how they are. But he can't play to that because he was in charge of Operation Warp Speed. He got the vaccine moving. So every time someone interviews him who you would think is his base and is anti-vaccine, he takes the other side. He's like, no, actually, the vaccines are perfect. They're working great. They save lives. Like, he needs the credit. His ego is too big to let something slide, including...
Yeah. Well, so has he been vaxxed?
Oh, yeah. He got booed at a rally. You remember because him and Bill O'Reilly both, which that was insane to me. At a Trump rally, Trump and Bill O'Reilly got booed because they talked about being double vaxxed and getting boosted.
Yeah.
And the crowd just turned. That's why I don't think he can win. His base is on the opposite side of him on that issue.
Don't think he can win.
No, I don't think he can win because of that.
Yeah.
That issue is going to keep people from voting for him.
Why do you think he's going to run then?
I think he needs to kind of legitimize his first go, because that's the thing. Everyone knows it was a fluke.
I don't think he's gonna.
This was a 1 in a million. He's like, no, I'm a legitimate president. I was a good politician. I accomplished things. He needs that.
I hope he doesn't run.
He's gonna run. He's for sure gonna run.
I don't think he will.
Who else do the Republicans run?
DeSantis.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. One dude.
That's true. But then what happens to Florida?
I know.
You got to give up Florida.
They're not going to want to get rid of him. But
No.
I think they'd like him as president.
Yeah,
whoever takes over Florida,
if he pushed Florida policies nationally, but Republicans don't do that.
What do you mean? They're
not as pushy as Democrats. Democrats will try to run the whole country like they ran their state. Republicans won't.
I think he would. I think he thinks the rest of the country should be doing what Florida's doing.
I'm sure he does think that. I just don't know if he would push it to that extent.
Well, I mean, he'll run on it, I think.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I think he's the obvious pick for the Republicans. And,
yes,
and most likely to win.
But I don't. Man,
the big question is the Democrat side. Who the heck are they going to put out if Biden doesn't run again? Which, I mean, he's talking
Harris. You put Harris out. That's all they got.
She didn't make it past like the first.
Yeah,
round.
But she checks the boxes.
I think it'd be probably Buttigieg is the next best. I think.
What's he doing? Where's he hiding now?
I don't know.
Who knows?
With his husband.
Newsom was the one for a while.
Reason they're gay.
I still love the picture of them in the hospital bed.
Oh my god!
What did you do?
It's so insane, dude. It's like a complete theater. It's like literally. I mean, Biden got the vax in front of literal theater. Like
right? Yes, in a stage. You can't.
What's going on?
I mean, people point out how everything is like.
They say 1969. You can't fake the moon.
No, you can't. Yes, exactly.
All right, we know that we can see the screens. We can see the stage.
The views.
We can see.
Do not necessarily represent.
Yeah, I mean, this is.
But they're people from 1960. They're still operating in that mindset that they can hide stuff.
Yeah.
They don't understand. Like, no, you can't anymore. Everything's out.
Is that why a lot of people? Is that why they just lie?
Yeah, because they don't think anybody knows. Like, you only lie when you think people don't know the truth.
This is kind of what we talked about last time about like who watches regular TV.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what I think about, man. Like with CNN, like who is watching that?
Well, apparently no one.
Yeah.
Well, CNN's freaking out because they're getting sold to Discovery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, AT&T is unloading Warner Media. They're giving it off to Discovery. So they're freaking out because one of the main investors in CNN, the top stockholder in Discovery, is a huge Trump donator. So, they're like losing it.
And then the guy just got
Zucker took off.
He got canned.
The rumor is that he took the heat for whatever he said, an inappropriate relationship, because something worse is actually going on and he didn't want that to get out. So
like the mask parties or the eyes wide
shut. Oh, the eyes wide shut parties.
That's what they're all into.
The spirit cooking and yes.
Oh my god, eating like sacrificing babies.
Well, Adele's getting canceled now.
Oh,
I found out because she likes to be a woman. That's the craziest one. She didn't say anything about anybody else.
So I heard that at the audience, I didn't watch anything, of course. Like
right, because why would you?
Yeah. that they were all like cheering, but it was only later online.
Yes,
everyone
that's where
was
it came
getting
from, of
going,
course. Right.
insane. But that's the thing, and that's what Rogan said too. Because the guests are like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, "Look, you just stay offline." He's like, because then you're in real life.
Yeah.
Online is online. It's not.
Oh man, I don't know.
It's real life. I mean, who's walking up to him on the street?
Well, no one, obviously.
Saying anything that anybody says online. Nobody.
That's true.
So there you go. Stay offline, and you're not in the world. You take the metaverse goggles off.
But you can't.
Get some fresh air.
You can't. Everybody has them on.
Yeah, but you take them off.
I guess so. That's the only way to beat the game is not to play.
Unplug from the Matrix.
Yeah.
Just stay with Morpheus and that ship for a little while.
And with someone like him too, the thing that I don't get is when celebrities freak out, like you're already rich. What are you worried about? What's the problem?
Who? Rogan?
Anybody. Rogan, The Rock, Adele. Like if any of them were getting canceled, you guys are already rich. Like what are you worried about? What are you going to lose?
Well, it's not about money at a certain point.
I don't know what that point is.
It's the point of like, well, I can just literally end everything, not do anything, and just live comfortably the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So now it's about reputation. Stuff. Like kings and presidents, they don't care about money. Yeah. They care about
That's true.
What is it? The secrets or the currency of kings or something.
That's why Trump's going to tank his money running for president again and not win. It's legacy.
But I think he can go out on top as like the coming out of retirement. Jordan came back to the Wizards
and just be horrible.
Yeah, like no, just stay out. Yeah. I don't think it's gonna happen. So CNN, did you see Russell Brand making fun of Brian Stelter?
No.
Oh my gosh, you have to watch that. It's so funny. He's making fun because Brian Stelter's like, why are people listening to Joe Rogan and not?
Oh, I did hear that.
CNN. We've
got a room full of researchers.
And
they're just winging it.
And Russell Brand just like mocks him and just like, why? He's just like, it's so funny. It's really funny. And he's just making fun of him. And yeah, but that's this big CNN's big question is like everyone's an idiot. It's like the Simpsons thing where Skinner's like, no, it's not me. It's the children who are wrong. It can't be me.
That's true.
Yeah, they're taking CNN or any of the mainstream media is not taking any sort of self-reflection.
No, at all.
Kind of taking a look at themselves like, why are millions and millions of people watching one episode of Joe Rogan and no one is watching our show? And like they're not. They're just baffled. They're just because people are idiots. That's their answer.
Right.
No, we're not doing anything wrong.
Because in their mind, they're an institution.
It's not all of our misinformation.
Yeah, they can't be wrong. They're the news.
So
the news can't be wrong.
Complex, man.
It really is.
It's just like we're the powerful. We're the smart ones, and they're all just idiots. Like the whole world is idiots except for me. And like it's really that mentality. It's so weird to like watch in real time. Just they're all just like baffled.
Well, all of them, all the news, any big establishment, anything is falling apart.
Well, so and that's why people watch Joe Rogan, not for Joe Rogan. I've said this before.
Right.
No one watches Joe Rogan for Joe Rogan. They watch it for the interesting guests that he has on, and Rogan is the perfect everyman who will ask all the same dumb questions I would. Because he's not afraid of looking dumb.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like on any other news thing or something, they'll gloss over something. And even if the person doesn't understand it, they won't say, hey, what's that? Or what do you mean by that? Because they don't want to seem like an idiot to the genius guest, right? Joe Rogan don't care. He's like, what does that mean?
Right.
And
explain that for everybody.
Super obvious or something. Or like, what is that? And then they'll explain it. And that's perfect because a lot of people listening don't know what those things are. And so he just dumbs it down for everybody. And because people are dumb. But that's why I watch Joe Rogan, because he'll ask the same dumb questions we will.
And he'll be willing to have to look something up live. Like,
it's a long
Jamie, look
form.
that up. I'm not sure look it up for me. Like, you can tell he doesn't know.
Unpack.
It works.
Yeah.
I think the beginning of his problem was when he had Alex Jones on.
Yeah.
He let Alex Jones look like just a dude.
Yeah.
And that was a problem. Like, you needed to believe that he was an insane psychopath, which, I mean, he is kind of insane, but also he's just like a big, loud, drunk Texan. Like, that's just who he is.
Who just continues to be right about a lot of things.
That's the most frightening thing. He's right.
You seen that video of him dancing, and it's like all the things he's right
yes,
about. And just lists out.
Well, he was on Tim Pool's show too, and they had one of those like live on air where he was like, "You're all eating clone beef." And it was like, there's no way that's true. And they looked it up, and it's like, yeah, most beef has been cloned. It's like, oh my God.
It's so weird. I mean, he'll just like, I think it's his ability to just retain any little bit of
Yes,
information.
that's what it is.
That passes through everyone else, you know.
And it just sticks. He's
like,
got in that net.
They're turning frogs gay.
Which was true.
Yeah.
The microplastics. It's a real thing.
The chimeras and like all the weird little things that are on real news, Associated Press, and New York Times.
Yeah, and he just remembers
like,
it.
what is that?
The problem is that he's been wrong about big things.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
But I mean,
that's all it takes, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
and it's just,
One big event, and
Yeah.
But you swing at every pitch, you're gonna strike out a couple of times.
What I'm waiting for is someone to ask Rogan why he took over 100 episodes off of his podcast, because that's something I saw too of people saying of like Michael Malice and Gad Sad, like
Lex Friedman had one.
Why did you take my episode
with
off?
nothing questionable?
It was. That needs to be answered, because apparently it was his choice. It wasn't Spotify going in against him.
I feel like that's what Spotify might be saying. It was like Joe's call.
We agreed with his decision to remove
right
episodes or whatever. These 2 episodes. The rest of them were ours.
Maybe it was really like, Joe, it would be really helpful if you could take these down for us.
Yeah, and we'll agree.
Right. We'll agree. Well,
if you want to, we'll agree to do that.
Kyle Kalinske, I think it was, had his episode taken down. And he was saying it was because Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Which that makes sense. And that's so dirty, because Saudi Arabia is horrible.
Yeah, that's a problem. If that's happening, then that is Joe.
I mean, we've been doing that with China forever. The money thing.
Joe doesn't do that. You know what I mean?
I mean, now he does, because he's part of a corporation.
I know, and so that has to be answered. That I've yet to hear that be asked and answered.
What would he say? What can you say if it's for that?
I really don't know.
What can you say?
He's aware of it.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's his choice. So it's like, hey, dude, why are you taking episodes off if you're not going to self-censor or whatever?
And I would have respected if he just came out and said, "Look, Spotify is trying to make money. What do you want me to do?"
Well, now that's a disagreement with Spotify then, because they're saying it was his choice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a question.
Yeah.
I don't know. That'd be interesting to hear about that. But anyway, I was like, these fools got me back on social media looking at following this new stuff. And Lauren was like, why are you talking about that? We'd be at dinner, and I'm just like, they can't take him off the air.
You're just stewing over it.
Like, you're obsessed. What's going on? And I was getting a little carried away, but I think it's important because there's voices and opinions and a free speech situations where he's kind of the last platform that will be heard by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Look, Ben Shapiro's got a podcast. Michael Malice, they all have a podcast, but they're not listened to like Joe's.
No, at all.
So they go on to Joe Rogan, and everyone will hear it.
Well,
because I listen to Ben Shapiro, and I'm like, man, a lot of people need to hear this,
but nobody will.
But conservatives do.
I won't even listen to Ben Shapiro.
People do. All the people who subscribe. I don't subscribe, but like the Daily Wire, the fans will hear it. Right. I mean? But then he goes on Rogan. Now everyone hears it. It's like, yes, this is important because these are really good points that a lot of people need to hear. And the only place to hear it that will be allowed to go on is Rogan's podcast.
Right.
And so I think it's this huge thing that needs to keep existing, basically, just for for the sake of rational thinking. I mean, on a big scale, there'll always be rational thinking. Right. We're always gonna have a podcast.
Right.
Us. But there's always gonna be time and place. For reason and for thinking and for clarity and for truth. But there's
the mass
scale,
audience,
the mass scale. That's
on a major platform.
He's got a giant platform, and he's willing to have rational people thinking, and the irrational, crazy people too.
Right, which is good. Those are great
people. I completely, horribly disagree with. You know what I mean? But it's the only last kind of place that exists like that and needs to continue existing. Basically,
that used to be talk shows used to do that. I remember there was an episode of Leno that had Tucker Carlson and George Carlin on the same episode, and it was nuts. But it was
a minute.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's true.
Even then, it's like,
but that was like the best you could get. Like, talk radio was dead, and it was very niche. Like, if you listen to Rush Limbaugh, you weren't getting alternate opinions or anything. You're just getting Rush or whatever.
Yeah.
But Rogan's taking everybody.
Yeah.
And I mean, who's after him? Because he's 54?
Something like that.
What's he gonna do? He's not gonna do this forever.
He'll do it as long as he can, which I think, it could be, it'll get us through the craziness. But yeah, someone's gonna have to either pick up the torch, or the winds are just gonna have to shift. I think what's gonna happen is the wokesters are gonna roll off the edge, and everyone with a brain is gonna just be still standing.
I feel like they already
kind of
have.
Let's get back to real life. You really?
I
don't
think
so.
They
have yet. I think they will, but I don't know.
I feel like the trans issue is going to be the tipping point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where if the government shifts right to, red, the red wave's coming.
It's not even the government. It's just people finding out what they're actually talking about, like the school board stuff and all that. Like
the government's what gives that stuff teeth.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So the CBS is not going to take my kids away because, I won't let them be trans. You know what I mean?
Right.
Unless the government, since also
they decide,
insane,
right,
and you'll take your kids away from you for those reasons and stuff. So that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, there's always going to be insane people out there having these views, but as long as they don't have the guns and jails too. That's what I'm worried about.
That's true.
keep the military and the police out of their hands, please.
God, can you imagine? There's nothing scarier than like a woke military.
You can see it. It's California.
Yeah,
it's burning to the ground.
Yeah,
that's what happens.
People are fleeing.
That's what happens when you give.
I asked. We had some families move here from California, and I asked them, like, what's the problem? Like, why is California so trash? And they were saying they lived a little further south than LA County, so they were like in Orange County, basically. So Huntington Beach and all that, Newport and all that, and they said that's all great. There's no problems there. The problem is that LA County is so big and so liberal that it just overwhelms the rest of the state, and you just can't do anything about it.
That's what I've heard about California, is that like it's like San Diego, San Francisco, LA, and Kentucky. You get far enough, and there's like farmland.
That's true, because it goes so far north,
horses and stuff, and they're like, we hate this. It's like not California anymore.
Well, they were talking about breaking it off for a little while. The Northern California, no, like the upper portion wanted to be its own state. Like they had a name. I forget the name they were trying to give it, but they wanted to break it off. Yeah, and make it a state.
The Cal Exit thing?
Yeah, I do remember that.
So the funny thing about Cal Exit was after Trump got elected, California was like, we want to break off, or like they were talking about that, and they were like, well, how would we? How could we? And could we be our own like little country kind of thing, and just kind of entertaining the idea. Well, so a lot of people started researching it, right? Started Googling it, started looking up Cal Exit, secession, these kinds of things. Well, apparently, like back in 2010 or 11 or something, like a long time ago, or 2014, something like a long time ago, there was this guy who was pushing for a Cal Exit, like a big secession of California. No one was listening to him because it was
it's crazy.
Yeah, because it was 2013 or something, and so I was like, everything's fine. But he like laid out how to do it, how it would work, how the economy, all the stuff. He did all this research and stuff, and no one listened to him. No one gave him the time of day, and so he moved to Russia.
Oh my God!
Yeah, he like moved to Moscow or something, and he's been living there ever since. And now, in 2016, when Trump got elected, all these people started like wanting to give him that time of day, and then he's like, "Where are we all? 10 years ago, like, I was trying to do this,
freezing my ass off in Moscow."
Yeah. But then that was bad too, because all the information led to him, and he's in Russia. Well, that's when Russia was,
right, the enemy.
Yeah. So it's like, oh crap! Now we can't, the head guru of Cal Exit is in Russia now.
Oh my God!
We can't listen to him. So it kind of thwarted that whole thing.
I don't believe in anything enough to move to Moscow.
Yeah, no.
It sounds miserable.
Yeah, it does. It sounds pretty rough.
They were pointing out. Tim Pool was pointing out that West Virginia split off of Virginia because of the Confederacy. Like West Virginia was like, we don't want to be Confederate, so they split off and joined the Union. And then when we reunionized, they just stayed a state. They just never put it back together. So that's why we have a West Virginia.
Like temporary.
Yeah, it was like a temporary measure that just never got taken off.
Yeah, that's funny.
Weird. Well, our other timely topic that leads into our topic of the day is Mouse banned, allegedly, supposedly.
The comic book by Art Spiegelman. Spiegelman.
I don't know.
Yeah, won the Pulitzer Prize for literature, and it's basically his father's story. Art Spiegelman's father was a survivor of the Holocaust, and so he wrote his father's biography in the form of a comic book, and where the Jews are mice and the Nazis are cats, and it's really interesting story. Just it goes real into detail everything of how his father survived and how everything they went through in the concentration camps and everything, as well as their time now.
Right.
When he was writing in the 90s.
Maybe before that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like flashback and then to the present with his dad now and how his dad lives in the United States now with him, and just all that kind of like dynamic and him learning about his father's story of being a survivor. Really great. I mean, it's I think really important, in the whole Holocaust stories, and just even in world history. It's really good. But yeah, it's being banned.
So
not good anymore.
If someone said a book was banned from a school, what would you think that looked like?
I would think that it's got some sort of terrible, like,
reprehensible material.
Yeah, either super violent or pornographic or something just kind of over the line of like, we can't have kids just looking at this.
Right.
Like, we're just kind of seeing this or whatever.
And that was kind of what they decided with the book. The reason it got pulled from the curriculum, apparently at that level, was nudity and language.
Right.
Those were the issues. So it wasn't really banned per se. It's just like, hey, we're not going to teach this in the classroom to this age group.
So it's not just being pulled from the school libraries.
No, it's being just taken off the curriculum. Like, let's put something,
but still in the library.
Right, you could bring it.
Go to the
right,
library.
You could go get it. Like, if you show up with it, you're not getting detention. It's not that kind of thing.
I don't know. Swastikas all over. What are you doing?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it depends on the kid.
There's a kid wearing all black. He's got the trench coat.
Yeah,
keep an eye on him.
Like, ooh, okay.
Nail polish.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. I was kind of learning a little bit more about how books are banned. Apparently, it's got to go through the libraries first, and a librarian can kind of yay or nay it. Like something. But people.
It's a lot of power for a librarian.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Well, I think it's usually like a petition or usually something going on
Right,
with the
right.
library, and then the citizens will like say, "Hey, we want this book banned," and the librarian or librarians or something at that level have something to say of like, okay, we will hear this out, or like, whatever. Or they could just say no.
Right.
And then I don't know if it even actually escalates from there. So it's got to be like a librarian to say okay for it to even get to like the courts or something. Like kind of city was. I don't know what schools, but I would assume the schools the same thing as public schools at least.
Right.
It's sort of the same thing. The librarians are sort of the gatekeepers on getting that ball rolling, which is very interesting because and usually they're like, no, everything's okay. Unless it is like pornographic.
Well, it is Tennessee, so it's a different.
Oh, is that where?
Yeah, it was in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So different ideas, different mentality.
Depends.
But I mean, the first time I read Mouse was from the public library, not the. That's where I found it for the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember the first time I read it. I think it was in college.
I was probably in high school.
UTSA has a really good comic book section in their library.
Our Lady of the Lake does too, actually.
Really?
They have a pretty good comic book section.
A lot of good comics and a lot of books about comics. I wrote most of my papers on comics in whatever class I was in.
And graduated. That's the scary part.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting, man. I don't know. I was thinking about this, having kids.
Yeah.
Like the difference between giving it to them and then finding it, and how old is it before I'm like, you're not ready for that yet, or this is okay for you to read.
How old would you give? How old would you let them watch Schindler's List? Because I saw that.
Ooh, that's a good question.
I watched Schindler's List as a kid. Like 10.
10? Okay.
Probably about 9 or 10. Because it was on TV. They put it on NBC, unedited.
Unedited, really?
Uncensored.
Wow.
Yes. Because it was like, important.
Yeah, it's history.
It was a big deal, like when that movie came out. And yeah, that's how it's. And they did the disclaimers on it, like, hey, this is some, adult, mature audiences only kind of thing. But they played it. They did the whole thing. And I watched it there, and then I watched it again, like just as a movie, like a videotape, or whatever. But yeah, I was young, and I remember that like really freaking me out, and I didn't understand the whole black and white thing.
Right,
like,
right.
So is this an old movie? This movie was made not too long ago, and then like the little girl in the red coat and stuff, and it's like I didn't understand. Like, so they did have color, but they're not. I don't understand, but it freaked me out. It scared me. It was very like, whoa, this is an insane movie. Like, this is serious. But I knew the whole time this is history.
Right.
I knew like this really happened. I think my parents kind of explained to me like, hey, this something really happened. This is World War II. This is the Holocaust. This is what this is. And I was like 9 or 10.
Wow.
So I don't know. I don't know. Like,
do you feel like it affected you negatively in any way?
No.
Right?
Not really.
I feel like kids are more resilient than we think they are.
Well, the insane wokesters certainly do, because they'll tell your kids anything.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I think when it comes to stuff like this, we're like exposing our kids to truth, even kind of hard truth about death or any kind of worldviews that are out there. It's like one of my biggest goals in life as a parent, to not have my kids be shocked by a worldview. I don't want my kid to go to college or have some friends or go anywhere or meet anyone and be like, what, do people believe that? I want them to know, hey, people are out there who believe this, and it's wrong, or it's misunderstood, or whatever. And like, we got to teach our kids how to think about stuff. Because I think our generation, it was just don't.
Yeah, very much.
That.
Yes.
Don't look at that. Don't listen to that. Don't, pay attention. It's like almost you're trying to make it not exist. That's impossible. You can't. They're going to be exposed to it, and the world in opposing worldviews are not going to beat around the bush about exposing your kid to that. They're going to tell them straight up, explicitly, whatever their worldview is. So we shouldn't beat around the bush either. We have to tell our kids the truth and expose them to worldviews in a way that we can explain it to them in the right way, and not have the world shape that narrative and that explanation for them.
I think that's important too, that idea of like explaining it to them, walking them through this stuff. Because when I found stuff like this, it really just was kind of just me figuring out, like, I found it and I read it, and there wasn't any kind of guidance or anything. It was just, this is what I found and I read it.
Yeah. And
it was that parents trying to keep stuff from you. Like, they're not going to walk you through it if they don't want you to have it at all.
Well, and I think it should be, a lot of things like this should be presented, and parents should expose their kids to these things in the right framework.
Right.
Instead of just saying, don't look at that. Well, that makes the kid want to just do it. You know what I mean? Don't just ban it. Don't just restrict it. And I mean, of course, there's some things.
Right.
Of course. But in other things, of just like other religions, like Islam, like, oh no, don't. That's not. don't read that. It's like, I want my kid to read the Quran. You know what I mean? And like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I want them to be exposed to different worldviews and understand and measure them up to our biblical Christian worldview, and see why it falls, see why it's wrong, point out the holes in it, and whatever it is, whatever worldview or, thing that's out there and stuff. Because like the kids, they'll, Audrey pretends to be pregnant all the time. Not just mommy, like pregnant. They'll put dolls in her shirt and she's, I'm pregnant. And then Nolan will like, I'm pregnant too. And he'll do it. And then, it's like, and then so we say, oh no, boys can't get pregnant. Boys can't have babies. And then, but I don't just say that. I also make sure to say too, but there are people who think they can, but they're wrong. That's not possible for a boy. The boys and girls are different. Girls can have babies and boys can't. And that's it. But there are some, and I tell them, but there are some people who think that boys can have babies, but that's not right. That's silly, right? Yeah, that's it. But so it's not just one thing, because I want them to know some people think you can, or some people think there are, or that it can be this way, but it's not. And at this point, it's just kind of telling them that. As they get older, I'll explain more in detail as they can pay attention, why these worldviews are wrong and incorrect and stuff. But for now, I think it's good and sufficient to tell them just no. But there are people who think so, but they're wrong. And when you get older, I'll tell you how, as you get older, I'll tell you a little bit more how.
And you're a couple years ahead of me with the boy too, because Gerard's starting to get to that point where he's starting to put together boys and girls, moms and dads,
Mhm.
different stuff, parents, children. Like he's just piecing it together. Like, why are me and you boys and mommy's not? And it's like, well, that's mommies or girls. Only girls are mommies.
Yeah.
And like he has a little brother now, and he says, well, what's he gonna grow up to be? I'm like, well, he's already a boy. He's like you and me. He's gonna grow up to be a boy too.
Yeah.
And just think, real weird questions. Like he, in his mind, married couples are mommies and daddies.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, how come not all mommies and daddies have kids? It's just like, you're married. Where's your kid?
Right.
Just things like that. So I know eventually it's going to get to the other point. It's like, well, I heard that this person said boys can be pregnant.
Yeah. Well, we tell them that too. I'm like, because the kids will even say like, I'm going to marry so-and-so, whatever. And then, Audrey will say something. I'm going to marry this girl. Like, no. Girls marry boys and boys marry girls. And they're like, oh. And so,
Right.
So now they're even saying like, they'll say it. And there's like, no, you can't marry her, And so they're just like, they'll say it now. So, but I think, that's, you got to explain that to them.
Right.
Like, and guess what? They're fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I told Nolan he's a boy.
It didn't freak out.
And
He
he's
didn't
okay.
have trauma.
Yeah,
He's
fine. Yeah.
You bigoted oppressor. You don't let him live his feelings.
For Christmas, we got Nolan a BB gun, and we got Audrey like a cooking set, and like we got her like a baby strap doll, like
the harness that you carry.
We got her a baby carrier, and then like oven mitts and like all these like, and we got Nolan a gun and like a army man stuff. I was like, I'm leaning into these
hard.
They're reinforcing. And guess what? They love it.
Well, they just gravitate that way. You can't help it. Like,
and then Audrey walks up in her little pink princess tutu dress too, and wanted to shoot the gun.
Right.
They let her. It's like, hey, there you go. Shoot the gun.
Figure it out.
We're all gonna shoot the. It's like fine. It's like, but you're still a girl. You know that, right? Yeah. Okay.
Well, anyone who has this idea that like, well, boys don't gravitate towards aggression has never had a boy. Like they just are. You walk by them and they just hit you for no reason. Like why? Because you walk by. I don't know.
If they don't, it doesn't make them a woman.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. Because there's in that way in our fallen world there is a spectrum of masculinity and femininity.
Yes.
On the sides and everything, and they'll point to that and say, well, see, there you go. Not all men are super tall and super strong and super whatever. So there's a spectrum. So just look at reality. Look, there's a spectrum there's all different kinds of men. There's all different kinds of women. So that means they don't really exist. Well, no. And I think that Christians, the only faithful answer a Christian should be pointing to is Genesis of saying, I made them male and female. That's it. That's it. So like that is how, not XY chromosome. Yes, that happens to be there, but in this fallen world and fallen creation of fallen biology, there can be XX men.
Right. Those can get a little mixed up.
Okay. And so we have situations where we're not sure. So we can't always point to fallen biology to as the final line in the sand. Well, the final line in the sand for Christians should be scripture, which says, I made them male and female.
Right.
Okay, there you go. That's how I know. How do you know there's two genders? Because of Genesis. So like that's it. That's the Christian's answer. And what people will do is point to race and say, well, that's a social construct too. And because which to a certain extent I would agree in the fact that it's ultimately meaningless.
Yes.
Right. But again, God didn't create them black.
Right.
God didn't create them white. God didn't create them whatever color. They don't mention race. In the creation of human beings, race is not mentioned
at all.
Okay, there you go. Kind of meaningless. It is we've made it mean something.
Right.
And that's why I think it is a social construct to some degree. Not that there are different shades of skin that does exist. We should recognize that as well in cultures and ethnicities and all different kinds of things. But
I know getting rated.
But we can let that one go and say, yeah, there's a spectrum. Yeah, there's whatever, because God didn't explicitly say, I made them this race or whatever. He just said, I made them male. But he did say, I made them male, female. That's why you cannot put gender on a spectrum. That's the only reason, I think.
It's weird trying to navigate this because, like I said, I just found stuff on my own, and I was pretty well supervised. But my dad was kind of loose with like, well, whatever. You want to. It's fine. Read that, look at that, watch that movie.
Yeah, I wasn't. My mom really care what I watched on TV and stuff.
See, mine
We
did
listened
too.
to.
Mine did too. And listening to, there was no leeway. That was music. There was no slack.
Yeah.
But I think just because my dad was a comic book guy, I got a lot of slack because of that.
Yeah.
Because he was like, yeah, it's weird. There's weird stuff. You just have to roll. It's part of comics. And
Yeah. That's cool. Well, my parents were divorced, so I had like 2 versions of. Well, you can watch this at Dad's, but not at Mom's.
That's so confusing.
Yeah. I could say, shut up at my mom's house, but not at my dad's house. And I could say crap at my dad's house, but not my mom's house. It was like a weird. So I had to remember. I had to watch my language.
I don't know where I am right now.
What house I'm in. Yeah, and because some words are bad words here, and they're not bad words there. Yeah.
Do you think anything should be banned as far as media? Any kind of book? Any kind of like? Where do you say this just shouldn't exist? We just shouldn't have this. Or is there anything?
Well, everything, every sort of thing, every type of thing can be redeemed, right? I mean, even sex and those things can be redeemed. I don't know about in entertainment,
right?
that way, but like just the concept of sex, can be redeemed into a wholly good thing that God created. Again, in our fallen world, everything belongs to God. First of all, trees, philosophy, everything that you can conceive of belongs to God and can be redeemed back to God. And God created everything that exists, and then in the fall, it was all corrupted and distorted, basically. We're still doing that. But I think we have a job of redeeming those things, redeeming wisdom, redeeming philosophy, redeeming marriage, redeeming education, redeeming business, redeeming entertainment. So entertainment is kind of, I don't know, like, I think we think of entertainment as like its own thing, and I don't know if that always was the case. Even to just recently, of like the idea of pop culture and just pure entertainment factor. You know, I'm trying to think of like old stuff hundreds of years ago that was considered like in the 18th century or 19th century, what was considered like just pure thrill entertainment, you know. Because I don't think like pulp magazine, like pulp stories didn't exist till the 30s, it was the 20s and 30s.
In the 1800s, you kind of get penny dreadfuls in Europe. That's like the closest thing, maybe.
And that was always seen as like
lesser,
well, just pornographic, or just like bad,
right?
You know what I mean? So that's what we just.
Well, that's why they were on pulps, because it was crap media. Like nobody cared about it.
But you wouldn't call that the entertainment industry,
right?
I think now that is the entertainment industry. I think. Like if the Puritans saw anything that we called entertainment, they'd be horrified because it's just so not even just on a like
it's vapid,
not even just sexually explicit,
right.
I mean, just like this is meaningless,
right?
Why are you spending so much time on this on Star Wars? And it's like, well, because it's awesome. It's so meaningless, you know.
That's true, but I mean, we live in a different world. Like we don't have to work as hard as they did to survive.
Maybe we should. Are we surviving if we're all just entertaining ourselves to death?
I'm thriving. I don't know. I'm not just surviving.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're very comfortable. You know, we've got time to think up stupid stories and make millions of dollars off of them, right? Of like entertainment. But I don't know, man. Like, I'm just trying to think of like how people spent their time or free time or whatever. And I think we've got our idea of entertainment as far as TV shows and books and movies and things like that is very different than, I don't know, even just to like the 30s and 40s, going back that far. I think people just worked a lot. Yeah. And
I mean, you had plays, you had vaudeville, you
Yeah.
had, silent film and stuff, but
you didn't have 10 hours a day.
no, at all.
Well,
no.
That's what I'm saying. That's what we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Like we just watch, we'd be entertained literally every hour of the day. That wasn't even possible.
Well, it's this
50, 60 years
because
ago.
you can.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We're just so like oversaturated, I think, with media and entertainment. And Yeah, I mean, and so I think that just that whole idea in itself of like, well, yeah, you can, read a book and then for that chapter that day, you're kind of into your escapism or whatever.
Right.
But if you're just like vegging out on TV for literally 8 to 10 hours a day, I mean, that's not entertainment. That's like a numbing. You're trying to numb something. You're trying to like just not be in the world.
That's true, man. That's really true. And that comes through with like the way people watch TV now, because I do it all the time, and I know it's just because I don't want to have silence or whatever, but just like the background noise TV.
Yeah.
Like I'm not watching it really, but I need something on.
I know I do that with podcasts and like music and stuff, like just to kind of have it on. I just need to. It's like I can't just work in silence or be in silence for any second. Like if I'm doing the dishes or something, I'm popping my headphones in.
Exactly.
I mean, why wouldn't you? Who wants to sit and be doing dishes? You know what I mean? I don't want to focus on that. I want to just like not be there while I'm doing it.
What'd you do before?
I don't know.
Right? I can't remember the old times. We don't have
a whole lot of before.
That's true.
With me, there's always a stereo to turn on.
Yeah, you always had a portable something.
If I'm cleaning the house, I could turn the stereo on, turn the radio on. I mean, that's our parents too. Like everybody could do something while they're working and listening. But you know what? Someone brought up a good point about that with podcasts specifically. If a lot of people listen to podcasts while they work, because a lot of people's work is pretty mindless.
Yes,
a lot of people's work is pretty like, look, I don't have to be here mentally. I'm just kind of pushing paper or, doing some, driving a truck,
checking boxes.
Yeah, and so I can just kind of do both. It's not that hard. It's not even really multitasking. It's just like, okay, I'm just gonna. But someone brought up like that is actually not very new. That idea, because what it used to look like 100 years ago is that families would be in the cornfields or doing the crops or whatever, and the parents or the older or the grandfather or whoever's older there would be telling the younger people stories, or they'd be telling them about their family history, or telling them about the war, or they'd be telling them something, and it's like, oh, that's a podcast, like.
I could see that.
You know what I mean? Yeah. They're out cutting this stuff and they're out doing the work and they're like, we're going to talk. We're all here working, pretty mindless stuff still, manual labor stuff, whatever. And we're going to talk to each other, tell stories. We're going to impart wisdom. We're going to, entertain each other or something, or sing or something.
Right.
And so that's a podcast. I mean, that's kind of the same concept, right?
But you know what the problem is? Nobody wants to talk to the people around them anymore because the people around us didn't do anything that interesting.
Well, the people on the podcast did.
Yeah, that's why you want to listen to the podcast.
Right. Well, back then they did do something interesting, and they talked about it while they're, harvesting the grain or whatever with their children or grandchildren or whatever. So someone brought that up, and I thought that was a very interesting point of why we like to do that, specifically with podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It almost feels like a good podcast. It feels like you're part of the conversation. Like I know you're not, but it almost feels like you're in the room with them.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I think those are the best podcasts. I mean, we're gonna be on a podcast talking about a podcast
right
now. I hope that's this show. I hope we can be very
conversational.
Yeah. Those are my favorite podcasts that are very just the people are being themselves, and that's I like some podcasts that aren't that way. That are very scripted. They're very structured.
Scripted ones are hard, man.
The topic has to be really interesting.
Yeah.
Like some of the history ones I listen to are like that. And it's like, cool. I mean, I'm learning about King Tut. This is cool. Like that's, it can be scripted. I don't have to hear them joke, around and banter or whatever for however long, whatever. And some of those like feels fake. Like some of the even like banter feels scripted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels like, hey, we're going to like.
They have the NPR voice on.
We're going to riff for a little while. Like, oh God,
scripted riffing.
Don't just be yourself. That's fine. if you're just however you are, just be that way. That's fine. You can be yourself. You don't have to be.
Maybe they can. Maybe they don't know how.
How do you not know how to be yourself?
Because you're so saturated in media, and like the thing about podcasting that's interesting is anybody can do it. It doesn't matter who you are. Anybody can buy a mic or not even just have a laptop and do it.
Yeah.
But there's people who have like media degrees, people who work for NPR or BuzzFeed or whatever.
Yeah.
They went to school for media. They work on presentation. They do like this is how you talk when you're on. Right. And they don't know how to switch that.
I did something for the church that was like a promo thing that was going to go on the social media for everyone. And so it was just like me talking in front of a camera, like about prayer meeting. And it was like the hardest thing. It was so difficult because they were like, okay, now say this. And it wasn't scripted.
Right.
It was just kind of like,
these are the points.
Here's the points. Just kind of say them. And I was saying it. It was so difficult. And they're like, okay, slow down because you're talking too fast and stuff. I'm like, I talk fast. Like that's me. I'm being fake right now. And I guess that's okay because you're just trying to relay information clearly. But this isn't how I talk. You know what I mean? They were trying to tell me like, okay, do this. Okay, say it
right
slower. So I was like, that's not how I talk.
We don't want you to be you. We want you to be the marketable you.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I guess there's a time and place for that.
That's sales. That's sales. Like have personality, but like the kind that makes people buy stuff.
But why do people like normal stuff so much then?
Because it's the only time that nobody's trying to sell them something.
That's true. We've never tried to sell
anything.
Really
we have no products, but there's nothing to give.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think some of the best salesmen too are very friendly and very like jokey or very just kind of relaxed.
Yeah.
They're not so formal, like some of the best like salespeople. You get to talking on the phone or something, or get to come to your house. And
but I think they've crafted that over years of like sales experience.
So is it fake?
Yeah, to an extent.
Yeah. It's
amplified. That's the amplified.
What's all this push for authenticity then?
It's like, I mean, people really want that, but they want it, but not really. Like, not actually.
Yeah.
They want to feel authentic. It's like buying organic groceries at H-E-B.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the farm, but it's the next best thing because I don't have to actually go to the farm and grow stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they do. There's practical reasons for that. Like, produce at H-E-B lasts longer than produce from Walmart.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I want my tomato to still be a tomato.
Right, but there's people who want it to be organic, free range, whatever, straight from the earth. But also, I want it packaged in plastic and at the grocery store, so I don't have to go pick it.
Yeah,
that's what we want. We want convenient authenticity. That's what we want.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's what we provide with this show.
I don't know if it's convenient. I don't know if it's authentic, but I don't know if it's convenient.
I did that. That app Grammarly?
Yes. Yeah, I do remember that.
I had that on my phone for a while, and I was using that, and it would help me like with emails or text or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started thinking, this doesn't sound like me.
Right. Because it's correcting you.
Right. But I'd never say this.
Right.
Like if I'm texting this or sending an email, even for work, if I was face to face with this person, I wouldn't say this.
Right.
So why am I saying it on an email?
Email feels a little more formal to me. Like when I'm going to sit down and write an email, it's very different than when I'm going to shoot a text.
But even a text, it was like,
that's weird. That's super. Like if you sent me a super grammatically correct text with punctuation, and everything, I'd be like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah, and I put the word "like" in there. You know why? Because I say "like" a lot sometimes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, okay, then just say it. If that's how you talk, then just.
I used to have coworkers who would tell me that they'd be like, "Why do you text how you talk?" I was like, "Well, how are you supposed to text? What other way do you text?"
That's what I would say.
I don't know, man.
Say it. Yeah.
I mean, so going back to like mouse and stuff, because we've talked about before with the Bible, right? Like the Bible's pretty graphic.
Yeah.
And we kind of, it bugs me when we, like, I get it, but when we have to like censor it for kids, I don't think we have to, but we do. The tendency is to censor it for kids.
I saw this video and they were it was these guys and they were like, I think super lefty. And they were going up to like Trump supporters and like people at rallies. I don't know what the rallies were for or anything, but
something.
it was around all this like book banning stuff.
Okay.
And he says, and they didn't know who he was, and he was like, "Hey, did you hear about this book that's in all libraries at school?" And in the book, it talks about a man who sleeps with his daughters and gets them both pregnant. They're two young girls, and they get their father drunk and they sleep with them, and they get pregnant by him on purpose. Like, and that's a book that's in public schools. Do you think that a book like that should be in schools? And they're like, no way. That needs to be like that book's the Bible. But their response is, oh no.
That's not there.
you're wrong. You know what you're talking about. It's like, oh my god, like it's so insane.
What's crazy is in the second half of the book, that guy gets called righteous. That's the part that'll blow your mind.
Yeah, or like throughout a lot of stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
but people just don't even know about it. Like conservative, so-called Christian
right.
people, evangelicals, they're like, oh no, you're mistaken. You're wrong. It's like, oh my gosh, you've never opened the thing. You've never read the book. You've never seen it. And yeah, but it's like, should that be banned?
No, obviously,
Bible?
yeah,
No.
You can't ban the Bible.
But it's got some gnarly stuff in there,
right? And not gnarly to where like it doesn't pull punches either. Like it's not sugarcoating it or giving you like workarounds. It just says it. It's like this happened and that was the thing. But that's also historical, and I think that gets to the Holocaust stuff too. Like you can't censor the Holocaust,
right? You
have to just like this is what happened. Like,
but if someone wrote a story like a sci-fi that was just all of that, like how they did these horrible things to people, even the Bible, some of the stories in the Bible that like, if some modern book or something that had the same exact sort of content. Could we let our kids read that?
There's the difference, I think, is that this didn't actually happen. You're inventing this depravity yourself and putting it on a page. Like it's almost like you're reveling in the
right.
You know what I mean?
So I've thought about this a lot before too, as far as books and movies and stuff, and explicit content and those kinds of things. And there's a difference between expression and indulgence.
Okay.
Right. So you can express something like violence or a rape or something, or just some real crazy stuff without indulging in it.
Right.
And it's hard to know where that line is as far as, like, okay, you can show this because it's a war movie.
Right.
Right. But then it's like, Tarantino made a war movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, is that like Saving Private Ryan versus Inglourious Basterds?
Right.
Like, okay, now you're going from expression of like these real, honest, true things of real life, of real humanity and morality and mortality and all these things on the beaches of Normandy and stuff.
Right.
And then, you've got like indulging in
Hitler getting gunned in the face.
Just like a machine gun to Hitler's face.
Well, I thought about that when I was watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. When spoilers, when they break into the house and Brad Pitt's slamming her face into the mantle.
It's like at the end of the movie, he forgot. It's like, oh yeah, this is a Tarantino movie.
Exactly.
I gotta have some.
There hasn't been any blood yet.
yeah, I know. So like, I would say that's indulging. And can it have a point? Yeah, I think it can. But you're still kind of indulging. You could have expressed this differently.
Right.
And I think I would say the majority of our entertainment is that way, is indulgent in those types of things. Because
that's true.
If it bleeds, it leads, right?
Right.
Sex sells. We know all these kind of things. So we're just going to indulge in those things to get the money, and it's a business. You're trying to make money, and okay, there you go. So, but you could have expressed this in a different way.
Right. And I think with his movies, specifically the later ones, not so much the early ones, because the early ones weren't as indulgent as the later ones. I don't think
they were pretty gnarly. Like
they were,
but Reservoir Dogs. Like what's interesting about that is like in the cop torture scene, right? When he cuts his ear off, they don't show it.
No, they pull away.
They pull away and pan off. I think it was for practical effect reasons. Like
I can see that.
Make it look real. They're like, it's gonna look stupid if you actually see the knife. And so he pans away, and then you hear the screaming and stuff.
Right.
And your imagination fills in the gaps. And it's like worse than anything they could actually show.
But I mean, even in Pulp Fiction, when Travolta gets gunned down, it's not that bad. Like he's dead and there's blood, but it's not like Hitler getting,
It's pretty Western cowboy movie.
Yes.
Yeah. The clutching.
Patton Oswalt used to have a joke about that his wife, he couldn't watch old Westerns with him. And he's like, it's just old guys going, ugh. But then he'd come home and she'd be watching Investigation Discovery, and they're talking about dismembering corpses.
I know. Yeah, I know. That's so. Yeah, it's the difference between, like, I was watching The Mandalorian, and there's a part where like these two characters fall off the cliff and they die, but it doesn't show them hitting the ground. Right. But they fell off the cliff and they die. You know what I mean? You express that scene, that what happened, but you didn't have to show them splattering. You know what I mean? And so and that's the difference, I think, between expression and indulgence. And when something gets too indulgent like that, and you're just not, there's too much muck to wade
Right.
through, and it's not worth the message or the point or the elements that you're trying principles that you're trying to see of truth or whatever that come through it. And that's where it gets like, what are we doing?
But that's why I get with horror people, like people who are super into horror. It's like, this is a little questionable.
Yeah, I know. And again, sometimes those can have interesting things to say, like the Freddy Krueger movies. Like, okay, there's a serial killer that can only kill you if you fall asleep. Whoa, that's an interesting concept. So, because then it's like, well, you have to sleep,
right? Eventually, he'll get
you. Go
into
this dream world, and well, then is it real? Is he real, or is it all in your head? Or some interesting things there, but they ruin it with just like
that's the point at the end. That's the point is the slashing.
So they can have interesting concepts, but the point is it's not worth wading through all the swamp for that.
With Tarantino, what I was trying to say about the movies is that the later movies are revenge movies. Like the Inglourious Bastards is a Nazi revenge movie. Like Hitler gets killed because he didn't get killed in real life. It didn't happen that way. So that's what happens. In Django, he blows up the plantation because that's not what happened. So this is how you get revenge. Right. And in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that's the most not the most. Maybe the Inglourious Bastards is the most divergent. Yeah. But the whole Manson family murders are horrible. Yeah. And here it's like, we're going to fix history.
Kill Bill. I mean, Kill Bill's the biggest revenge one, I think.
Yeah, but that's not. It's revenge to something that didn't really happen. That's what I mean. Correct. Tarantino's like, like he can get a pass on the Indulgence because like, well, these were horrible people. They did horrible things in history.
Yeah, you can machine gun Hitler.
Yes, no one's gonna be upset.
Yeah. If they are, you're a bad guy.
Right. You're the one who's wrong.
You're protesting that?
Yes.
Oh,
when Django blows up the house, everybody cheers. That's the point.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of where I land, is like difference between expression and indulgence. And as I get older, that line shifts further away from indulgence.
I can see that. Yeah.
It's interesting thinking about books though, banned books, because I see some of the banned books and I'm like, why in the world was this banned? Right. Like To Kill a Mockingbird was banned. It's like, what? Or Fahrenheit 450. It's like, why? There's nothing bad, but again,
Fahrenheit 451 is hilarious.
Yeah. Well, it's like, okay,
little on the nose.
Or Catcher in the Rye.
Right.
And it has the F word in it, which for like 1950 something was like, whoa, okay. But I think it's used very well. I think there's a time and place for F words. Right. The Time and Place podcast is not that place. Right.
We're not going to indulge.
Usually. Occasionally,
it'll slip out.
But anyway, but yeah, so I think it's more political reasons and more like, just political. We don't like this ideology, so we're going to ban it or something, or race, with a lot of those things. So it's not necessarily just explicit sexually or violent explicit stuff. It could be just political or ideological as well.
I can see that.
That books can be banned.
And that changes with time too. Like now, like you said, like why would you ban this? It's not even that egregious. Yeah. But I think language is another thing like that, because that's a thing that comes up. Like, how can Christians cuss? Is that a thing? What is cussing? How do you? Yeah. It's intent, I guess. I don't know.
That's everything.
Yeah.
Is lying a sin?
Well, sometimes.
I mean, are you lying to Nazis to hide Jews?
Right. Who are you lying to and why?
Then no.
Yeah.
But if you're lying, so yeah, it's all in context. Like context is key to everything.
Well, context is dead.
Yeah.
In modern society.
Nuance. That's what.
Yeah, nuance is gone.
Martin Norman said nuance is the new N-word.
Oh man. Well, speaking of banned books.
Yeah.
Banned books from the Bible. You just read up on that.
Yeah. So I just read The Heresy of Orthodoxy by Andreas J. Kostenberger. I hope I said that right. Pretty sure it's a dude. And Michael J. Kruger. So Kruger is why I read this book. This is the third book I read of his. Really, really great resource for Christian history, church history, and biblical textual criticism and history. Usually a lot of that stuff's Catholic church history and Christian history. But he's a Reformed guy, takes a really good, faithful, biblical look at Christian history and biblical textual criticism and stuff, and it's just really good. There was one section that really, really stood out to me that kind of sums up the whole book, because he goes through canon and how we got the Bible. And what people have in their head about the biblical canon is that there was a council that a long time ago in the 4th century where they just threw a book out,
Right.
Deuteronomy,
Yay or nay.
yay or nay. And a bunch of old bearded men like raised their hand or voted on which books should be in the Bible, which books should not be in the Bible, and it was settled, and they decided, and it's just because of that church council that we have a Bible.
Right.
That couldn't be further from the actual historical truth. So it's a lot more, not necessarily even complicated than that. So this book takes a look at the Bauer thesis. So there was this guy named Walter Bauer who created this thesis, basically saying we didn't have it was the diversity of Christianities in early Christianity, and Bart Ehrman kind of picked up the torch for this and carried it on too. But it's the Bauer thesis, which is basically there were so many Christianities and everyone disagreed with each other at the very beginning of Christianity, and it's only by accidental, sort of coincidental circumstances that we have the Christianity that we have today, that we have the canon that we have today. There was all these different theories.
These are just the ones that survived,
right? These doctrines won out over these other doctrines, and that's why you believe in the Trinity, or that's why you believe Jesus was God, or that's why, because of history and all these. So it says, the subtitle is How Contemporary Culture's Fascination with Diversity Has Reshaped Our Understanding of Early Christianity. So basically, like, it's better to be diverse right now and to see things from all angles. And that's like the better way to look at it, which again is just one worldview. It's just one view, and you're still being exclusive. Right. Because if you don't see diversity as the only way to look at it, then you're wrong.
Right.
Okay, you're just as exclusive as I am now. So, but that's what the Bauer thesis is basically, and he's taking it that, that was kind of like laid the groundwork for all biblical textual criticism since then. And it was like, I can't remember when that was, but it was like in 1934. And then English translation of Bauer's volume in 1971. So it was like early 20th century that this like all kind of came to be like the Bauer thesis. And that was kind of laid the groundwork for all historical looking at the Bible and everything. So he points out a lot of holes in the Bauer thesis and like, let's take a look at this research and how he put this together. And he does. And it's terrible. He doesn't even, first of all, he doesn't use the Bible as historical record or as a historical look at it. Even though we know historically that a guy named Paul wrote this, a guy named Luke wrote that, we know these things, but he doesn't use them. So, well, why not? So why are you, why aren't you using these earliest manuscripts and these early writings that you can find, which is the Bible, and as any sort of indication of what people believed? He doesn't use that as like, oh, there was an orthodoxy. It's like, well, yeah, if you're going to wait until the Gnostics started writing, in 150 AD, then yeah, you're going to see like a lot of different heresies and stuff pop up. And even in the Bible, we see heresies popping up, right? Right. And saying like, if anybody brings another gospel, and so because
if anyone denies the Son come in the flesh,
the Judaizers. I mean, there was like all things already popping up at that time, but they knew it was heresy because they had an orthodoxy already. And so he kind of points to that. He points to the apostles. He points to their authority having walked with Christ, and not the Gnostic gospels that came later that mean nothing. So like a lot of this comes from like the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Mary that come up later. Right. And we made a discovery. All these missing books of the Bible, that were just for political reasons weren't put in the Bible, and they're just as authentic and just as legitimate as Paul's works and everything else. No, they're not. I mean, and one of the biggest reasons is history. So everything up to Revelation was written before 90 AD. Right. We know that. Right. Now, there's some speculation on Revelation being the last book, 60 ADs, 90,
70 something.
Yeah. We don't know, but we know it's at least 90. Right. We know it's at least first century.
Nothing was written after that.
Right. And then nothing really was written like that or discovered to have been written till as early as 150 AD. So Christ died at 33 AD. And the last book is 90 AD, 60, maybe 60 AD. Years, maybe. So you're looking at 30 or 60 years after that the Bible's done. Right. That's not a long time. especially considering every other ancient work of antiquity that we have is hundreds of years afterwards. The first word about Alexander is written like 500 years after he died. The first word that's ever written about him is hundreds and hundreds of years later. No one doubts the authenticity of a lot of those things.
Right.
I mean, there's some dude that just want to stir the boat and get a paper published. They will, oh, we don't know. And there's like stuff about Homer, like, well, Homer wasn't a real person.
Right.
You know, there's like, so there's stuff.
We don't know who wrote Shakespeare.
Right. Yeah. There's always those things that come up. But, you know, everything else is written hundreds and hundreds of years after the person has died. This is in their lifetime. Things are already being written, and people who were eyewitnesses, who were there, who walked with him, wrote things down. And that, I mean, so that's what we have in Scripture. But I wanted to read this one section because it kind of sums everything up, especially when it comes to canon and how we got the books of the Bible. So what he does too is he puts everything in the context of a covenant, and he's saying that, look, they had the Old Testament, and Paul pointed to the Old Testament as prophesying and pointing to Jesus Christ. So when that Christ comes, wouldn't they have written about it like that? It makes sense that they would have written things down, because that's another thing too, is it's oral tradition, and they didn't want to write anything down. They were illiterate. They weren't, whatever. And he kind of dispels a lot of those myths too about them being super illiterate.
Right.
No, they were a bookish people.
Yes.
They had, well, first of all, a lot of them were Jews.
Right.
And read the Torah.
That blows my mind, that idea that they would call them illiterate knowing they're Jewish.
Yeah. And so, anyway, they had if they could read anything, it was Scripture. Right, the Old Testament, because they had that. And Paul points, and Kruger points to like a through line from the Old Testament to the New Testament with a canon, and he specifically ties it back to covenant and God working and redeeming his people and then writing it down. There's a pattern of that throughout. And so he's saying the New Testament picks up that same pattern that the Old Testament laid down. When Moses brought the people out, what's the first thing he did? They wrote something down. They wrote down the law. Okay, when Christ redeems his people, what do they do? First thing you would write it down. They would write down that story, that gospel. So he says, so just as covenant documents were delivered to Israel after the deliverance from Egypt by Moses, so it would seem natural to early Christians that new covenant documents would be delivered to the church after deliverance from sin by the second Moses, Jesus Christ. If Israel received written covenant documents to attest to their deliverance from Egypt, how much more would the church expect to receive written covenant documents to attest to their deliverance through Christ? Thus, it is the dawning of God's long-awaited redemptive triumph in the person of Jesus that is the foundation for the giving of canonical documents, and not later 4th century ecclesiastical politics. And man, like like that sums up everything. It was like, this comes from God's word. This is, and we've seen him speak this same way in the Old Testament. Something nobody doubts about, like what those books were, why they were written, and if they were written, if they're legitimate. Do they speak about God? Do they speak about? Yes, that's not it's the New Testament really that's contested of all this textual criticism and stuff. How do we know what we have as the canon? How do we get the canon and stuff? Well, he draws a natural through line from the Old Testament in God's redemptive work of his people and written covenant documents right into the New Testament with the new covenant and those new covenant documents. And it's really cool. I highly, highly recommend Michael J. Kruger in any of his books. He's got books about early Christianity. He's got books about canon. He's got this one about the myth of diversity of Christianities, and so really, really good resource. And it's not, very accessible, not super academic, It's not
even that long. That's
not that long.
Surprising about it.
It's really well written. It's really easy to read, really good to follow, and I highly, highly recommend it, because I think that's something that Christians don't know enough about.
For sure.
History.
Yes.
And how we got the Bible. I certainly don't. And this is my effort to learn more about it, because I want to know what, I don't want to be caught by those stupid people on the street saying something about the Bible I don't know about.
Well, it's funny because you got two myths about early Christianity. You have this one, the diversity, that there was just a million Christianities, and the Catholic claim that, like, no, it's always been Catholic. We've always believed these dogmas forever. Like, well, that's definitely not true.
Yeah. Well, Catholics are kind of loosey-goosey with Scripture anyway.
Yeah.
It's not
super
the final
true.
rule of faith,
right.
Right. They say it is, it's not.
No.
It really isn't. And they'll say, well, you don't even have a Bible without the Catholic
Yes.
Church.
Oh, that's such an irritating claim.
I know. I mean, he talks about that, about how, like, you know, the community is built around the word, not the word out of the community. That's, you know, how it's always been done. And so there's the word first, there's the canon first, and there's borders built around the canon, sure, but it's not something that's created and voted on and decided. It's something that's discovered,
acknowledged,
and revealed. It's like, okay, here it hits you. You don't hit it. You didn't fashion it. And so, yeah. Anyway, so really good book. Highly recommend it.
Cool. Yeah, because I mean that Nicaea myth is like a big one. That's a cult myth. That's a Mormon myth. That's a Council of Nicaea, Constantine.
Well, it's funny how little people know about this. I listened to a podcast called Banned Books of the Bible. It was an episode they did, and they were talking about this, and they were like, yeah, we have to make a correction. We were talking about, I guess they have a previous episode about this. We're talking about it, and someone pointed out that Nephi is a Mormon book of the Bible, and like, and that the Mormons actually don't see that as part of the Bible, but as a newer thing, a separate thing. It's like, you didn't know that?
No.
If you don't know that, why are you commenting on Apocrypha in like lost books of the Bible and stuff? And you think the Book of Mormon is like some controversial lost book of the Bible?
That's so common. Like, pull any Christian and ask them to explain canon or Apocrypha or what Mormons read or any of that stuff.
This is why Christians lose their faith in college.
Yes.
Because a bunch of professors like Bart Ehrman, who is funny because there's the Bauer thesis that started this whole diversity of Christianity thing, carried on by Bart Ehrman, who's a huge voice in criticism against Orthodox Christianity. He teaches all these unreliability stuff. That was Kruger's professor.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
He was like literally a student of Ehrman. And so it is like, all right, hang on. Yeah, so that kind of launched his whole career in this of textual criticism. So it's great.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he's speaking directly to. He knows he's not strawmanning anything.
Right.
He knows.
He sat through the class. He wrote the papers.
And so it was.
That's fantastic.
Was one of his professors. So yeah, so Kruger is a really great resource.
And that's important because there is a lot of internet atheists, and not even atheists, let's say internet Catholics too, who have that perspective, like, oh, it's a Catholic book. Without Catholicism, you wouldn't have that. And when you know the truth, those arguments are so easily broken down and dismissed. They don't have anything. Yeah. Like, they really don't. They're counting on your ignorance. Yeah. There was a person I talked to, and I don't want to name him because I don't want to put him on blast, but we were having a discussion. They became Catholic. They went from I don't know what their path was, Catholic to not Catholic to Catholic again. Yeah. And we were talking about it, and I was like, well, what was the trigger? What was the switch? And they were saying that a relative of them had asked them before the New Testament was put together, what Bible did people have? What was the authority? How did they know what was right and what was wrong? And they couldn't put an answer together. Yeah. I don't know. What did they have before the Bible? And, you know, the answer from this person was like, well, they had the church. They had the authority of the church. And it's like, well, no, before the New Testament was put together, they had the Old Testament. That was the scriptures that they're referencing in the New Testament over and over again.
Well, humanity has never, ever been without the Word of God.
Yes.
Whether it's from a burning bush or straight from heaven or a pillar in this, the Holy of Holies. We've always had the Word of God. We've always had God revealing himself to us. And through prophets, through anything. So we've never been without the Word of God. Now we've got a nice leather-bound Bible. That's good. But humanity has never been without God's Word speaking into his creation.
Yeah, we really have to reframe the way we think about a lot of this stuff. Right. It doesn't work. On that, to end this one, for next week, I want to talk about something else that we have to kind of reframe the way we talk about, and that's baptism. Well, I think we want to talk about baptism because we've had a discussion off before about the difference between what is the word we used? The difference between literal and allegorical and physical and spiritual, and how those two things are not the same, but they get used interchangeably. Yeah. And they can cause problems. And I think baptism is one of the areas where it causes problems because you have the magic water or nothing at all. Those are the two options that people take. And I think it's somewhere in the middle, but
Yeah.
we'll get to that next week. Anyways, in the meantime, thanks everybody who joined in, watched, like, share, tell your friends about this, get people going, let everybody get in on it because we enjoy interactions. If you disagree, we like that too. So please shoot us an email at timeandplacepod@gmail.com. We'll respond to those because that's awesome. Any kind of participation is appreciated. Until next week, this has been the time and the place. We will see you guys. Peace.